Alright, let's go ahead and begin your Week 12 lecture. But before we begin, I just have a few announcements real quick. First off, remember that your second essay is due about a month from now, around the very 1st of May, so be sure that you're on top of that and that you're completing or at least working on your essays, and that way you're not all stressed out during the last week of school trying to get everything done. So just be thinking about that right now. Think about it, it's about a month ahead, so it's a 5-page paper. If you write 1 page a week from now on, you should be good to go. The other thing is you just had your last test, so very good job on that. Very impressed with the grades as always. But just keep up the good work and you should be good. Keep posting those discussion boards, keep your grade up. If you have any questions about your grade or anything like that, please do not hesitate to send me an email. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start your Week 12 lecture on political parties. We have a lovely quote here by Thomas Jefferson, if you want to pause the video and read it real quick. What you're going to find today is that early on, the founders of this nation, the writers of the Constitution, really did not like political parties all that much. And so looking at the system today, I think they would have a very different view on how, or be kind of not really sure about how things turned out, have a different view on the way things should have gone and things like that. So we're going to talk about America's political parties today and kind of see the history about that, what they do, what their function is, and where they may be going as well. So let's go ahead and start first off with just the simple definition of a political party. The definition I provided here, the definition that you will definitely see on your test, is organized groups, political parties are organized groups that seek to gain office and exercise political power through legislation, executive action, and control of government agencies. So political parties are highly organized. They have a hierarchy structure, they have a leader, and then they have 3 different components, which we'll see here very soon. But all political parties, no matter how big or how small, they all seek to gain office, and they all want to have some political influence, political power, in both the legislative, the executive branch, as well as control of government agencies. Political parties are unique because, like I mentioned, they're not in the Constitution. The founders of the nation, the writers of the Constitution, really did not like political parties. They thought they were going to drag the system down. We need to present a unified front is kind of what the thought was for the founders. But all political parties, because they're highly organized, they do have a network of supporters. Industry and businesses are very highly interested in what political parties can provide for them and how they're turning out. Trade unions, think tanks, nonprofit organizations, as well as any group that's not formally part of the parties but at least working with them. All of these have kind of a say on what goes on in the party. They exert some pressure on the party because they're their main supporters. They're their source of campaign finance. They're their source of votes as well. I have a link here for the founders in the parties, which will explain kind of the founders' views on the parties and how, looking at the system today, it probably didn't turn out exactly like they had thought it would. So if you want to go ahead and click on this link, it's a very interesting read. Be sure to check that out if you do have time. But moving on, we need to at least talk about what parties do. So now we've defined parties as organized groups that seek to gain office and exercise political power. But what do parties really do for people and in general, I guess? Well, first off, they recruit and nominate candidates for office, and they connect them with supporters. They want to find viable candidates that can win elections. And in order to win elections, they need to find them, not first of all, but they also need to connect them with a base of supporters that can rally around them and try to get out the vote for them. They serve as mechanisms for organizing U.S. democracy. Things are highly organized between Republicans and Democrats. Every now and then you also have a third-party candidate that will slip in. Parties facilitate governing across 3 branches. In all 3 branches, both judicial, executive, and legislative, all of those people, whether it's explicitly stated or not, at least belong or affiliate with some party or one or the other. Parties educate and inform voters. Party label is often a cue. We kind of know what to expect from the Republicans. We also kind of know what to expect from the Democrats as well, simply based on that label of them being Democrat or Republican. Parties get out the vote. They're the ones that will try to mobilize voters, get them to the polls, whether that be by shuttle, phone bank, door-to-door, what have you. And then finally, parties integrate new groups. Whenever new groups come into the fold, come into the political spotlight, or the suffrage realm, I guess I'll call it for lack of a better term, parties are the ones that try to kind of socialize them into the political sphere and try to gain those new votes, because you need to appeal to those new integrated groups. So throughout history, we've had these new groups that have come into the fold, or at least the political spotlight, such as African Americans, Hispanics, LGBT, and then new people, young people. As soon as they're of age to vote, they're consistently coming into the electorate, and so the party will try to reach out to the young people as well to get them to vote for their particular party. So all of these are purposes of a party. Now we need to kind of think about, how do we break down a party? Well, there's different models and meanings of what a party is. So let's first tackle the models over here on the left hand. Oh, sorry, went ahead and clicked one. Let's go ahead and tackle the models over here on the left hand column here. Parties can be kind of seen in different lights depending on the political system surrounding it, and that's kind of what I mean by models. So you have the rational party model, and then you have the responsible party model. Here in America, and please note for your test, here in America we use the rational party model. Many other countries, though, will use the responsible party model. Let's go ahead and explain what the rational party model is. The rational party model is simply where parties will sponsor candidates for political office, and all parties want to control the government. So what I mean is that all parties will go ahead and they want to control the government, so they'll go ahead and sponsor candidates that can win. They'll go to this candidate and say, hey, how about you we think that you're going to be good for the Republican Party. We think that you're going to be good for the Democratic Party. How about we help you out with some campaign finances? We'll help you out and provide you with a campaign team as well. As long as you carry that Republican logo or that Democratic logo next to your name, we'll sponsor you for office. And that's what happens in America generally. But on the flip side, the responsible party model actually has a more focus on the party and less on what the candidate can bring. A responsible party model has distinctive platforms for each party. Each party has its distinctive platforms. So when voters go to the polls, they go ahead and vote for the party, not the candidate. So under this, you'll never see, oh, I really like this guy, so I'm going to go vote for him. Most people will say, oh, I really like this party platform. I like what they're going to do in this next term, so I'll go ahead and vote for that party. And that party will carry out that platform if they're elected. Once they gain the majority in the legislative branch or the executive branch, they'll go ahead and carry out that platform that they ran on. It assumes clear and ideological and philosophical differences between the parties. In order to have distinct party platforms, you need to have clear ideological and philosophical differences for each party. Whereas, here under the rational party model, each candidate may have a different interpretation of what it means to be Republican or what it means to be conservative. And so the candidates really matter a lot more under the rational party model. The candidates matter less under the responsible party model. The party matters more under the responsible party model, and the party matters less under the rational party model. So hopefully that's not too confusing. If you do have questions, send them my way. But just know, for purposes of your test, that we use the rational party model here in America because the parties sponsor candidates, rather than the responsible party model where party matters more and the candidates matter less. That's why most people run on their own personalities here in America compared to other countries where they run based on the party platform. All right, so those are the different models. What are the different meanings or different facets of what a political party is? So you have to break down party into basically three different terms: the party organization, the party in government, and then the party in the electorate. And we're going to go ahead and break this down in the next couple slides. But the party organization just means the overall organization, the machinery of the party, the actual Democratic headquarters, the Republican headquarters, the national party organizations, and the state party organizations. Party in government means the people that are actually elected to be in the government, the congressman, the president, the bureaucracy as well. People that are actually elected into government under that party banner. The Democrats and the Republicans in Congress, the Republicans that have been president, the Democrats who have been president. Anyone who's in the party or affiliates with a party and is also serving in the government. So the Senate, the House, and the White House. The party in the electorate is all the people like you and me in regular society that vote for that party and are card-carrying members or at least identify with that party in some fashion. So whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're in the electorate. You're part of the party in the electorate. And so that just means all the common people, all the rest of society that are not in the government or are not working for the party organization. So most people reside here in the party electorate because we're the voters, we're the people that are in normal society. If you need to break it down just a bit further, I provided this graph as well. We have what most people will call pig, pie, and po. Pig being party and government, pie being party and electorate, and then po, party as an organization. So once again, pie is just all the citizens who attach themselves to a political party. You and me, your peers, your friends, your families as well. Most of them are part of the party and the electorate. The party in the government is any officials elected under one party banner. Once again, it's the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans in Congress, or the Republicans who have been president, the Democrats who have been president. Party as an organization is the formal apparatus of the party, the headquarters, the people who do a lot of campaigning and fundraising and things like that. That's the party as an organization. So we're going to go ahead and talk about each of these individually because it's a nice way to break down the party and what the party does and all the different facets of the party. And we're going to begin here with the party as an organization. Oh, forgive me, I forgot that I had one more slide here. Just one more breakdown of the roles of parties, parties and organization, party and government, party and the electorate. And you can kind of see how it all breaks down over here on the right. So no need to rehash it again, but if you want to go ahead and pause this slide, feel free to do so. But let's go ahead and talk about the party as an organization right now. Party as an organization. Well, each party as an organization has kind of a hierarchical structure, and each party has its own separate leader. So who is the real party leader? Many people would probably look at right now Barack Obama as the Democratic leader. He's in the highest position that any politician can get to, the presidency of the United States. And so a lot of people, and Barack Obama is a Democrat, so a lot of people would look at Barack Obama as being the actual leader of the Democratic Party, since he is the most prominent politician of the Democratic Party. But the fact is that he's not actually the party leader. Each party has its own organization, its own national committee is what they're generally called here in the States. The Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee, they each have their own leader. And not a lot of people have heard of these people because they're not in the spotlight. They're not they're not out there being politicians. They're simply out there promoting the Republican brand or the Democratic brand, and they're making sure that everything is organized and being real leaders within the party as an organization, the party apparatus. So the Republican National Committee chair is Reince Priebus. He's been the Republican National Committee chair for, I would say, I think it's since 2010, and he's the one who oversees everything that goes on for the Republican Party as an organization. On the flip side, you have the Democratic National Committee. You have Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's the leader of the Democratic National Committee, and once again, she has the similar job to Reince Priebus, just making sure that everything runs smoothly, making sure that the party is getting its name out, maintaining the brand, and kind of organizing the platform and national conventions as well. Party as an organization, their main job is to run campaigns and finance. They try to raise funds for both the Republicans and the Democrats for their respective parties during non-election years. They also, the party as an organization conducts a lot of research. They try to measure different demographics and how the movements of people are flowing and things like that. They research different issues as well to kind of poll and see how the party and the electorate is feeling about particular issues. They do a lot of communication and marketing. Like I said, they try to maintain the brand. They try to communicate to voters what's going on within the Democrats and things like that. And then also another function in general is compliance. They want to make sure that they're complying with all federal election laws and that they're also being accountable to the voters as well. And so that's just kind of an idea of what the party as an organization does. One of your discussion board questions will have you research one of these parties a little bit more in depth and kind of see what their platforms are as well. Also part of the party as an organization is the different congressional campaign committees as well. So you have the national committees, but then you also have the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which focuses on campaigns within Congress and particularly within the House of Representatives. You also have the Senatorial Campaign Committee, which focuses once again on Senate campaigns in particular. The same thing on the Republican side here. You have the Republican Congressional Committee, which focuses on elections for House members, and then the Republican Senatorial Committee, which focuses on elections for the Senate members as well. All of this really culminates for the party as an organization in the National Convention. The National Convention happens every 4 years during presidential election years. Officially, the only purpose of the National Convention is to nominate the president and vice president officially. But if you remember when we talked about elections, we talked about primary elections. Most of the time, you already know who's going to be the candidate for the president and the vice presidency by that time because the primaries are over with. But it's more just of a formality. It's a big ceremony. It's a big media kind of hoopla, that sort of thing. And it all culminates in the official nomination of the presidency and vice presidency. Also at the National Convention, you ratify the party platform. The party platform is read and agreed upon, and all the state delegations vote on it. And also they ratify any changes in the party rules. So all of this National Convention, it gets a lot of media attention. Maybe you guys have seen it most recently during the 2012 election. Maybe some of you going back to the 2008 election also watched the party conventions then as well. It's a lot of dancing, it's a lot of music, it's a lot of celebration, a lot of speeches are given and things like that. And it's a big fiasco. But it costs a lot of money to run those big national conventions. So I provided a link here. It's actually kind of worth your time to read. It's a very good read. Are conventions worth it? Is it worth spending that millions of dollars just to put on a national convention, just to ratify the nomination of the president and vice president, which we already knew beforehand? So it's kind of a discussion whether those conventions are worth it or not. Because on the con side, you're spending all this money just to create a formality, more or less. But on the pro side, you get a lot of media coverage. Your candidates get a lot of media coverage. And also, since all those politicians are giving speeches, parties are able to find potential in other candidates as well. So Barack Obama was kind of a no-name senator before the 2004 Democratic Convention, and he gave a speech at the 2004 Democratic Convention, which showed his potential to be a higher-up politician, and in 2008 that culminated in him running for the presidency. So, are conventions worth it? Is it worth it spending that kind of money? It's a worthwhile debate. Whether you think it's worth it for all the media coverage or not, whether you think it's not worth it just to create a formality, that's up to you. But it is a worthy discussion question, and I definitely think it's worth reading your time. Or it's definitely worth your time to read this article that kind of asks, are conventions worth it? So that's the party as an organization. The headquarters, the leaders, the hierarchy, the people that get the research, the campaign and finance, that's the party as an organization. Both Democrats and Republicans have a formal apparatus, a formal organization around them. But let's go ahead and talk about the party in government. Once again, the party in government are the people that are actually elected into government, both Democrats and Republicans, and maybe even a few independents, such as Bernie Sanders from Vermont. The party in government are the ones that are deciding the actual issues and conducting the business of government. And when you talk about the party in government, you usually talk about it in two different ways. You talk about it as either a unified party, a unified government, or a divided government. Unified is really simple. One party controls all the branches of government, basically. They control both the presidency and Congress, both the House and the Senate. So if you have a Democrat in the presidency and a Democratic-controlled House of Representatives and Democratic-controlled Senate, that's a unified government. Same way with Republicans. If you have a Republican president with a Republican House and a Republican Senate, that's a unified government. Unfortunately, we have a long history of divided government. Unified government sounds really nice. It's really efficient. We get things passed through quicker. There's no vetoes. There's no partisan bickering or anything like that. But the United States does have this history of divided government, where we have one party holding the presidency, and then one party holding the House, and then another party holding the Senate, or things like that. So you have this history of divided government, and the fact is that it really creates this kind of concern about gridlock. Now, Texas is unified. Texas state government is unified because it's a Republican dominance. But state differences highlight split ticket voting, and that's where this concern about gridlock, is that you have one party in the House bickering against the party in the Senate. Currently, I guess you have a Democratic presidency with a Congress which is controlled by the Republicans, and so because you have a Democratic president and Republican Congress, it creates this divide, and there's a lot of partisan bickering, and not much gets done. But it does kind of beg this question, which works better. Once again, the unified government may result in more legislation being passed because there's less roadblocks. But divided government, the pro to that may be that it may be more cautious and limited and actually provide a means of debate between the two parties. However, a completely divided government may actually lead to dysfunction, gridlock, and shutdown. So whichever one you kind of go with, there are pros and cons to both. Unified may be less cautious, may just pass things with being careless, but divided government may be more conscious, but also create gridlock and shutdown. So that's just kind of the history of the unified versus the divided government, particularly in terms of the party and government. So let's go ahead and look at just a little bit of history, and you can kind of see here that we've had a huge we've had a long history, I guess I should say, of divided government. Very rarely do we actually see a unified government. I guess you find a few examples here, 1949 to 1951 and 1951 to 1953. You had a unified government. You also had a Republican unified government, 1953 to 1955. The 60s was an era of democratic dominance throughout, so you had unified government throughout the 60s. But once again, once you get to the 70s, you begin this divided government again. Unified government here, unified government for a little while here, unified government for a little while here, and unified government for a little while here. So you do have a few examples of unified government, but for the most part, it's been divided. The clear majority of these are divided governments. And if you can't see down here, it says Pres, Senate, and House. So this third column here would be the House, middle column would be the Senate, and the left column here would be the presidency, whether it's Democratic or Republican. This graph here will also show it as well. We do have a tendency to lose a unified government as soon as there is a unified government. So as soon as there's a unified government, the party of the presidency tends to lose seats in Congress, in both the House and the Senate. And this creates the effect of divided government. When the party of the president starts losing seats in Congress, you're going to have a divided government between the presidency and the Congress. And you can see here, I guess I'll go ahead and give the most recent example here, down here at the bottom with Obama. Obama had a unified government for a little while. From 2008 to 2010, he had a unified government. But as soon as the midterm elections come, he lost 63 seats in the House and 6 seats in the Senate, and also 6 governorships as well. So there tends to be this trend of having a divided government right after we have a unified government, and it makes it really hard to get things passed. And that's why a lot of people will complain about Congress, about not getting passed, and that people will complain about that, well, why doesn't the president just agree with Congress? Why doesn't Congress work out with the presidency? Well, the fact is it's a divided government. It's very partisan. And to have a divided government makes things really slow, inefficient, but once again, more cautious and maybe more deliberate, and provide a platform for debate and compromise as well. So pros and cons, once again, to the unified versus divided. I just want to show you guys the trends and how that's kind of turning out, and why we tend to have a divided, inefficient government for the most part. So I hope this makes sense, the difference between unified and divided. I can guarantee it will be on your test. Hopefully you guys, if you guys do have questions, please send them away. I can try to clarify. But at least know for the purpose of your test the difference between unified and divided government. The other thing that's kind of driving this divided government as well, I wanted to show you guys, is party unity. There tends to be little compromise. Party unity is just simply blocking legislation just for purposes of your party. So increasingly, divided government means more bickering and therefore less legislation. They're blocking this legislation, they're not getting it passed through. And you can see down here, this is 2013 to 2014, so this is the most recent Congress. You can see here that it was the least efficient government, least efficient Congress in terms of passing meaningful legislation ever. The Republican-controlled Congress in 2013 to 2014 was the least efficient in terms of actually passing legislation because of this idea of divided government. The fact that you cannot get past the partisan bickering just means that you're going to have a less efficient government and therefore pass less meaningful legislation. So I just wanted to show you the trends. You have an all-time high over here in the 50s in which Democrats and Republicans generally agreed. And they actually were very efficient Congress as well, passing through things. But you can kind of see the trend downward just a little bit. You have certain little spikes as well. But for the most part, it's trended downwards, and then 2013 to 2014 was an all-time low. Now, contrast that, the fact that we have had such a divided government for such a long time, with poll numbers about the system that Americans most prefer. Now, this graph here, it's from the Gallup poll, shows that Americans actually prefer a one-party government over a divided government. So that begs the question, why do we prefer a one-party system but continually vote to have a divided government? Begs a good question. Now, don't get me wrong, the numbers are not far off from each other, but it is noteworthy that since 2012, the trend, or at least the desire, to have a same-party government, or a unified party government, has been increasing. So that's very interesting. It depends on which side you're on. Are you on the side of the Democrats or are you on the side of the Republicans? If you're on the side of the Democrats, you want a Democratic-controlled Congress, since you already have control of the presidency. But if you're on the Republican side, you want a Republican president because you already have a Republican-controlled Congress. So it's very interesting to see how that plays out. We prefer our own party being dominant. That makes sense. And we prefer to have a one-party system because it's efficient and gets things done. But the way Americans vote continually gives us a divided government for whatever reason. And so it's very interesting just to look at these numbers real quick and see that it does contrast our behavior. Our desires often contrast the actual behaviors and the actual outcomes within the political system. So I just wanted to bring that up to you as well. All right, so let's go ahead and we talked about the party as an organization, we talked about the party in government. Let's go ahead and talk about the party in the electorate. The party in the electorate is very, very important. And how the party in the electorate kind of comes about is through party identification. Party identification is very, very important. I'm going to give you the definition of it in the next slide. But just know for now that the party identification is acquired through socialization processes. That's where we get our party identification from. Party ID is the best single predictor of how someone will vote. Party identification, as you'll see in the definition, tends to stick with us for a very, very long time. We tend to identify with one party and then we tend to stick with that for a very, very long time. And so we can predict about how people will vote based on how they voted the very first time. Straight ticket voters, meaning that they only vote for one party, that trend tends to be increasing. More people are just voting straight ticket. Split ticket voting, where a person will actually look at the candidates and maybe vote Democrat here, Republican here, or Republican here, Democrat there, that's actually decreasing. Less people are becoming split ticket voters. Rather, people are becoming straight ticket voters simply because of the heuristics involved and the fact that it's just simpler to vote for one party. We use the party identification as a heuristic or a shortcut to vote in each election. Important factors for our party identification include race, education, and religion, and gender as well. And so I wanted to show you this. This is just the racial and ethnic group, minority group breakdown for each party. Basically, this is from the Obama-McCain election in 2008. And what you can see here is that race is actually a huge factor in determining party identification. That's just simply what I wanted to show you here. You can see here that most minority groups, Asian, Hispanic, and Black, will all vote for Democrats. But if you tend to be the white or Caucasian background, you tend to vote Republican. So that's simply why I wanted to show you this chart. This breaks down the 2008 campaign. There's very fascinating demographic breakdowns for both the 2008 campaign as well as the 2012 campaign. But I just wanted to show you how important race is in determining party identification. So I've mentioned party identification a lot. What is party identification? Well, let's go ahead and look at this first definition here. Party identification is a psychological orientation, a long-term propensity to think positively of and vote regularly for that particular political party. I like this definition a lot. It's a psychological orientation. It's embedded in our minds. It's the way we think. It creates this psychological orientation, and it also creates a long-term propensity to think positively of and vote regularly for a particular political party. Because it's embedded in our mind, we use it as a heuristic. It's the way we think. We kind of see things through our party lens, if you will. It creates this long-term propensity. Like I mentioned, as soon as you vote Democrat or Republican in one election, studies show you can predict with great accuracy the fact that those people or you will vote continually for that Democrat or Republican party since you voted for it in the very first time. Not often do many individuals change parties. Independents are a different story. Independents actually tend to be of the old swing vote mindset, where they will vote Democrat here, Republican here. But for the most part, as soon as you attach yourself to one party, you will continue to vote for that particular party. That second definition here is simply the party that an individual has a personal identification with and generally votes for its candidate. So kind of just rehashing what I've been saying. That party identification really is a long-term thing, and it's something very deep to think about, and kind of you need to look at how the trends are going for each party to determine how voters will continue to vote for that party or continue not to vote for that particular party. So what is the party identification? Well, we've already defined it. Once again, it's just an individual's voters' psychological ties to one party. I am a Republican, I am a Democrat, I am an independent. But please do note that party identification is not the same as ideology. We often attach, here in America at least, we often attach Republicans with conservatives and liberals with Democrats, or Democrats with liberals, if you will. But that being said, it's not the same as ideology. You can have liberal Republicans. You can have conservative Democrats. Party is not the same as ideology. Party is, however, formed early on, often inherited from our parents, and it rarely changes later in life. So we form it early on. We often form it within our teenage years when we're first learning about jobs and economics and money and politics, going right along with that. And rarely do we change it later in life. Now, the strength of party identification also matters as well. Now, most people will say I am a Republican or I am a Democrat, but note that there are different degrees within identifying yourself as a Republican or Democrat as well. You can have a name-only Republican or Democrat. You can be affiliated with the party in name-only, which means that while I am a registered Republican, I'm a registered Democrat, I don't necessarily agree with all the platforms and everything that's going on with Republican or Democrat. Now, upping the strength just a little bit, you have a loyal voter. That's someone who says, I am a Republican or Democrat, and continually votes for Republican or Democrat. And really upping the degree, the highest degree of strength, I guess, if you will, is the party activist. These are people that not only vote for that party, but these are the people that will have yard signs, will go door to door, will canvass, will volunteer for the party as well, will donate regularly to the party as well. Those are the party activists, the ones that are really tied in, really invested in the future of the party. Party activists are the complete opposite of name-only voters. Name-only voters vote for a Republican or Democrat every now and then, even though they don't necessarily disagree. And name-only party identifiers are more likely to switch their votes as well to another party. So it's all about the strength of party identification, in addition to tying yourself to one party. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and look at some charts and numbers. Once again, I mentioned that party identification is not the same as ideology. And this will show it just a little bit. This breaks down party identification and their ideology. So you have the Republicans here. The Republicans, for the most part, as we would expect, most Republicans are conservative. But you do have some moderate voters that affiliate with the Republicans. And surprisingly, you also have some liberals that affiliate with the Republicans as well, at about a 4.9%. Now, flip this onto the Democrats, you do have a higher number of conservative voters than liberal voters that vote for the Democrats. The opposite ideology is actually a higher number for the Democrats. And for most, if this was actually an in-person class, I would actually ask you, why is it that Democrats have more opposite ideology voters than Republicans? Why is it that Democrats have more conservative voters than Republicans have liberal voters? And I would normally ask that in class. I'll just go ahead and give you the answer. The fact is that you still have a lot of Southern conservative Democrats. Remember, the Democrats used to be the conservative party, particularly in the early 1900s and the 1800s. You still have a lot of old Southern Democrats that still attach themselves to the Democratic Party, but ideologically are conservative. And so the fact that, once again, the fact that party identification is a long-term propensity kind of thing, the fact that it's stuck in those old Southern Democrats' minds for so long and they still vote Democrats, still affiliate with Democrats, that's the reason why you have the Democrats having a higher percentage of the opposite ideology, is the old Southern Democrats are still identifying as Democrat, even though they also identify as conservative. Democrats also have a larger share of the moderate vote as well, which is also very interesting. The fact that they're gaining more moderate votes probably explains the fact that they've won the last two presidential elections. More moderates are identifying with Democrats, which makes it easier for the Democrats to gain the median vote, which we'll talk about later on in this lecture. But as to be expected, a higher percentage of liberals identify with the Democrats, simply because that's typically the ideology that we associate with the Democrats as well. So just wanted to show you this figure breaking down party identification and ideology. Let's also look at party identification in terms of raw numbers. This is simply party identification in their yearly averages. So I'm not sure if this contrast shows up very well on your screen. It shows up fairly well on my screen though. This dark green is Republican, this middle green kind of here is independent, and then the light green, I'd almost call it a yellow green, is Democrat. And what you're going to see here is that it used to be that the parties used to dominate. A high percentage of people identify themselves as Democrat, high percentage identify themselves as Republican. However, what you're seeing recently, particularly since the 90s and here in the early 2000s and even 2012, more people are shying away from parties. More people are identifying themselves as independent. You have a little dip in independency right here, but it's going up. And at no other point in this graph is independent higher than currently right now. Right now, more independents are identifying themselves as independent. I should say more voters are identifying themselves as independents. The trend is kind of showing that people are kind of fed up with this two-party system. People don't really like the two parties, and the fact that they're bickering and the fact that Congress is kind of at a gridlock is moving people or kind of discouraging people from joining a particular party. Now, the Republicans have definitely been hit hardest. More Republicans are becoming independents, but it is even affecting the Democrats here as well. So Republicans right now are at 25%, Democrats are at 31%, but independents are at an all-time high at 42%. So that's going to be very interesting for future elections. How are these parties going to adjust, knowing that they're losing members? How are they going to adjust to attract more independent voters to vote for their particular candidate? That's going to be a particularly interesting question in coming elections, particularly in 2016, when we've seen this trend of becoming independent increase even further. Those parties are going to have to work the traditional two parties are going to have to work to attract independent voters. I would say the Democrats are going to have to work a little bit less than Republicans because Republicans are losing numbers at a faster rate than Democrats, but it is still affecting both parties. The independents do matter. So if you're an independent voter right now, it's a good time to be an independent voter simply because those parties are going to work for your vote. Rather than if you're already in a party, you already kind of know how you're going to vote. So they're not really that concerned about you all that much. Let's go ahead and look at another poll here. This comes from Gallup. This is political ideology. So let's look at how political ideology kind of turns out. And this is very interesting because what you're going to see here is that the liberal voters have never really been around. What is kind of making the Democratic parties thrive is the moderate voters. Liberal voters have always been low since the early 1990s. They have gained a little bit. They've gained about 4 percentage points, but that's nowhere near compared to the level of conservative and moderate voters. The conservative voters are actually higher. So this is very interesting. We're having more conservative voters, but less people identifying with the Republican Party. That's very interesting. But you're also going to see that the moderate voters are staying pretty even, and those are the ones that are also turning independent as well. So like I said, the parties are going to have to adjust. They're going to have to go after those moderate voters as well as those independent voters, and that's where really the key to winning elections kind of sits. All right. More millennials are identifying as independents. No really need to go over this graph. Most of us are within the millennial generation here. And what you're going to see here, you have the blue, which is Democrat, the red, which is Republican. The Republican, like I said, the Republican Party is losing a lot of members, more so than the Democrats. More millennials are identifying as Democrats, but even more so, more millennials are identifying as independents. So if the Republicans can gain these independent votes, that will help them, but also know that the Democrats are also going to be going after those independent votes. If you want to look at the older generations, you can see the breakdown as well. The millennial generation is the one that's really unique because it's not that mixed. It's very distinct. It's very divisive. It's very distinct in the way it's going to trend, whereas the other generations kind of had a mix between independents, Democrats, and Republicans at one time or another. So hopefully these graphs make sense. They're kind of I'm just trying to illustrate to you the way the independents are going, the way the parties are going. They're getting weaker, and the independents are really going to matter in future elections. The other thing that's also very unique is that men are increasingly identifying as independents as well. This is men compared to women. Women are more and more identifying as Democrats, but men are kind of shifting away from the Republican Party and moving in to the independent nature as well. So not only is the fact that independents are increasing, it's also interesting that men are shying away from the Republican Party, which is traditionally where they would go or how they would vote, and moving more towards an independent status rather than the traditional Republican status or Democratic status as well. All right. So that's enough about the party and electorate. I just want to show you those very interesting graphs, show you how the trends are going, the demographics are going, how the statistics are going for each party. So this kind of begs the question. We saw how the independents were increasing, more so than any other political affiliation group, more so than the Republicans, more so than the Democrats, and the fact that the moderates were also becoming a big part of the electorate as well. How are these two parties going to adjust to the fact that independents are increasing and the fact that moderates are becoming a bigger part of the electorate as well? Is this kind of signifying the end of America's two-party system? Now, that's kind of up to you. You can form your own opinion, but I at least want to present you the facts of why does America have this two-party system? Why are we stuck with this two-party system? And is this data suggesting that it could be the end of the two-party system in America? Why do we have a two-party system in the U.S.? And if they cannot win national offices, what roles do third parties play in our system? None of those graphs showed the role of third parties. But the fact is that because more Americans are becoming more independent, the role of third parties could also increase in future years as well. So let's go ahead and answer the question, why do we have a two-party system? And in order to do that, we need to look at the history of the U.S. parties. U.S., for the most part, since its founding, has had a two-party system. Early on, we had the Federalists versus the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists would probably identify with the Democrats today, I would say. The Federalists wanted a strong national government, similar to what the Democrats want today. And they had closer ties with Britain, and they also favored more trade. Now, the Democratic Republicans, the Anti-Federalists, if you will, existed at the same time in opposition to the Federalists. And they favored farmers, and they also liked France. And they also wanted more states' rights, similar to what the Republicans wanted, or want today. The Democrats, the actual Democrats that are around today, started around 1829. The Democratic Party has evolved more so than any other party in U.S. history. The Democrats started in 1829 generally as a rural type party. They wanted states' rights at first, and Democrats also tended to support the Confederacy as well. Since they enjoyed states' rights, they tended to support the Confederacy. Now the Democrats are completely opposite. Now the Democrats tend to be more liberal-minded ideologically, and they promote a stronger federal government and less states' rights. Now that was the Democrats in 1829, and they've existed until the present. Now for a little while, the U.S. had a third party, a viable third party. In fact, a third party that won 2 presidencies. The Whigs existed from 1824 to 1854. You had 2 Whigs, like I said, that were elected president, William Henry Harrison and Zachary Taylor. The Whigs favored economic protectionism in public education. That was their main platform, expanding public education and favoring economic protectionism. Now, they existed until 1854. Enter the Republican Party. The Republican Party in 1854 was actually much more aligned with the Democratic Party today. The Republican Party was originally a more liberal party. It was pro-union, and it was obviously in favor of the Union and led by Lincoln. Now, the Republican Party today is much more conservative. They favor a weaker federal government, and they also tend to have a platform of religious freedom. So those are the main 2 parties that we have existing today, the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, you also need to throw in the fact that America actually has experienced a wider range of diversity within its parties. It's actually experienced many third parties. You can go on Wikipedia, you can look at a large list of actual third parties within America today. So I just threw a few of them up here on the slides. You have the Libertarian Party, the American Independent Party, you also have a Socialist Party within America, and then the Know Nothing Party. If you're interested in these parties, you can definitely just kind of Wikipedia them and see what's going on there. And there's actually an extensive list. It's very interesting to read. Many people today will point to the Tea Party. It's worth noting that the Tea Party is not actually an official political party. It does generally associate with the Republican Party of today. And so the Tea Party just tends to be a more conservative movement within the Republican Party. So that's the brief history of the U.S. political parties. If you have any questions, be sure to send those my way. But let's go ahead and look at different eras. So like I mentioned early on in the lecture, the founders didn't really favor political parties all that much. You had the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, but the parties really started to gain strength during Reconstruction, I guess you should say, from 1870 to 1920. 1870 to 1920 was really the heyday for party strength. you had what was called the party machines. And so let's go ahead and explain just a little bit about what the party machines were. The party machines were led, one of the most famous leaders, I guess you should say, of the party machines was Boss Tweed. If you've ever watched Gangs of New York, he's actually featured on there. He's one of the main characters on there. He led the party machine in New York. Party machines were simply, both the Republicans and the Democrats had these party machines, and they would reside in big cities. And these parties would find new immigrants, or maybe the poor, or maybe people that couldn't help themselves. And both the Republicans and Democrats would go into these areas and supply people with goods and services. And when they gave them food and shelter and clothing and things like that, they would say, okay, well, we'll give you these things in exchange for your vote. Remember who gave you the things that you needed when you were poor and hungry. Remember those when you go to vote in the next election. In exchange for your vote, we'll offer these services. And that's kind of how the parties built themselves up. That's how those parties gained voters. In order to gain voters, they basically bribed people. They bribed people for votes. That's more or less the easy way to say it. And these party machines were really big. They were strong. They were corrupt. They had a stronghold on the electorate. If people defected from the party, they felt threatened because the party was so strong and could hunt them down and things like that. If they didn't vote for that party, they would be cut off from their goods and services as well. So that's just kind of giving you an idea of how the parties were from 1870 all the way up until 1920, really. That's the way the parties functioned. They gained votes by giving people goods and services. That's how the parties survived. A lot of people looked at that and said, well, it's really corrupt. We don't like the way it's going. People are fearful. How can we reform this? And in the progressive era, during the 1910s and 1920s, you had a number of progressive era reforms that kind of aimed to shoot down the party machines, or at least bring them down a notch or two. So you had appointed boards, meaning they were appointed by an already standing politician, and they had to be approved by, say, the Senate or another body. You had nonpartisan offices. You had offices that didn't have a partisan affiliation with them. So if you're working in the bureaucracy, you don't want them to be partisan. You want them to be unbiased. You simply want them to do their job. And so we created a number of nonpartisan offices. You had the civil service reform, which we're going to talk about quite a bit when we talk about the bureaucracy. But for the most part, just know that the civil service reform was reforming the bureaucracy to make sure that it was nonpartisan and was based on merit rather than bribes. And then you had the primary election system, which narrowed down the candidates and gave the voters a say on who was nominated for each party for presidency. So it really brings the question of to what extent should parties get control, who is on the ballot. Should we have a stronger party similar to the party machine, or should we not, and let it reside with the voters? So I just want to give you a quick history on the party strength and the party machines, and let's go ahead and talk about where we're at today. Oh, sorry, forgive me. I guess I deleted another slide here, but let's go ahead and talk about third parties now, I guess. So third parties in America, like I said, generally we think about parties, we think about the Democrats and the Republicans. Third parties are a vital part of the American system. Third parties rarely do well, unfortunately. The Republicans and Democrats, for the most part, don't face much competition from third parties. You do have a few examples, such as Ross Perot. Ross Perot ran in the 1992 election. He gained 19% of the vote, which is the highest percentage that a third party has ever gained in a presidential election. He didn't get a single electoral college vote, because remember we talked about the electoral college, you have to actually win a whole state in order to get electoral college vote. But that being said, Ross Perot did receive 19% of the overall popular vote, which is very, very good for a third party candidate. Third parties generally don't succeed because of a number of things. First off, they don't have a lot of financial support. Financial support meaning they don't have big donors donating to them. Why would donors donate to a third party when you already know they're going to lose? Secondly, the winner-take-all system kind of disadvantages the third parties as well. The winner-take-all system deems that whoever wins that particular state gets all the votes from that state. And so for third parties to win, they actually have to win a number of states. But third parties are very niche. They tend to only tackle one issue that maybe only one state cares about or something like that. And so it's very hard for them to take an entire state or take a number of states within the winner-take-all system. Third parties also receive a lack of media coverage. That's sort of self-explanatory. Generally, the voters believe that third-party votes are wasted, so they don't bother voting for that third party. And then finally, anyone with serious ambition, if they do have serious ambition, they have great political clout, they tend to move away from a third party eventually and then sign up with one of the major two parties. So I guess the best example of that would be probably Ron Paul. Ron Paul is a libertarian through and through. He's part of the Libertarian Party. However, he had serious political ambition, so he had to join the Republican Party, and then the Republican Party kind of knocked him down, and he wasn't very successful as soon as he joined the Republican Party. So the Libertarian movement is kind of stymied by the fact that it usually gets sucked up by the Republican side, generally. So that's kind of another reason why third parties don't do very well. You have to in order to win elections, you have to kind of sell your soul to one of the major two parties, for lack of a better way to put that. So that's kind of why third parties don't exist. Now, or third parties don't do very well, I guess I should say. So we talked about the winner-take-all system, and that's kind of where it's going to lead us to electoral laws. Electoral laws are very, very important, and particularly for parties, because it kind of determines what kind of party system you're going to have. There are 3 systems for choosing winners in elections, and I care that you know this for your test. I can guarantee that it'll be on your test. Here in America, we have a plurality system. And so this is the one I care that you know. The plurality system is also called first past the post. I'm going to post a YouTube video into the folder as well that will maybe explain plurality versus majority just a little bit better than I can. But just know that plurality system, basically it's whoever gets the most votes wins. U.S. has a plurality single-member district system, which I'll explain here in just a little bit. Plurality means whoever gets the most votes wins. It doesn't have to be more than 50%. It simply has to be more than all other candidates. More than 50% is where you get this idea of a runoff majority voting, meaning that somebody has to gain more than 50% of the vote, 50% plus 1. If no one gains more than 50% in the vote, you're going to have a runoff majority in which you narrow it down to the top 2 candidates, and then whoever wins out of the top 2 candidates, obviously someone, if there's only 2 candidates, will win more than half the vote, then they'll win the majority, whoever gets more than 50% plus 1. So majority voting, you try to get 50% plus 1 in the first election. If not, you narrow it down to the top 2 candidates, and then those top 2 candidates will fight it out for the majority in the runoff election. Now, that's plurality and runoff. Those two generally make sense. Plurality we're very familiar with, whoever gains the most votes wins. Majority we kind of understand because we understand majority rule. But the one that's not very common, and definitely not here in the Western Hemisphere within the U.S., is proportional representation. And what this means is that you look at the total votes and say that there's 100 seats within Congress. You look at the total vote and say one party got 6% of the vote, one party got 25% of the vote, one party got 40% of the vote, and so on and so forth. Well, that party that got 6% of the vote, now they get 6 seats in Congress. The party that got 25% of the vote, they now get 25 seats in Congress. The party that got 40% of the vote, they now get 40% or 40 seats within Congress. Proportional representation simply means that whatever percentage of the votes the party gets is the percentage that they receive in Congress, or the percentage that they receive in the legislature. So that really makes it viable for third parties. Proportional representation, third parties actually do very, very well, because they know as long as they get 1% of the vote, at least they'll get 1 seat in Congress. But the plurality system really shuts down those third parties and shuts down their proportional representation. So say libertarians were actually allowed to be represented in Congress based on proportional representation, well, then libertarians would probably get at least 1 or 2 seats within Congress, which would be good for their party as a whole. But this plurality system, this winner-take-all mentality, means that whoever gets the most votes wins. And so even though the libertarians got 1% in the last election, let's say, they get 0 representation, even though they got 1% of the vote. Proportional representation makes it a lot easier for them to at least gain some representation within Congress. This is kind of an idea of single-member districts. And so remember, the U.S. has a plurality single-member district system. So let's have this fictional state called Galvestonia. Galvestonia has 1 person elected per district, whoever gets the most votes, plurality single-member district system. So Galvestonia is this nice little square. It's divided into 4 districts, and there's only 1 member, single-member districts, 1 member per district, and it's whoever gets the most votes. So the light blues got the most votes over here, so they represent that entire district now. The reds got the most votes over here, so now they represent that entire district. Same way with pinks, same way with dark blues. They get the most votes, so they represent that entire district. Contrast that with Dentonia, which has multi-member districts in Dentonia. The top 4 vote getters, or top 4 parties with the most votes, represent all of Dystonia. Oops, sorry. This is a multi-member district, so the top 4 vote getters, or the top 4 parties with the most votes, represent all of Dentonia. It's not divided into districts. The entire state is in a district, and so whoever gets the top four vote getters out of that state, they get to represent them. And so that may create a situation in which you get a Democratic representative, a Republican representative, a Libertarian representative, and say maybe a Green Party representative, because those are the representatives that got the 4 most votes. You may also have it where you get 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, or 2 Republicans, 2 Libertarians. You just look at the top 4 vote getters based on the candidates, and whoever are the top 4 vote getters gets to represent that state. So that's a multi-member district. You have multiple members per that district or that entire state. So that's an example of a multi-member district. Multi-member districts with proportional representation. Let's go ahead and talk about that right now. We talked about the proportional representation, in which the percentage of votes that you get is the percentage of votes that you get within Congress. Well, this is an idea of the multi-member district with proportional representation. You have 4 representatives for that district, so similar to Dentonia, you have 4 representatives for that district. And you have a single election for that party. And let's say in this election you have the Greens, the Communists, and the Socialists. So it's a very leftist state, apparently. But you have the Greens that win 50% of the vote. You have the Communists win 25% of the vote, and the Socialists who win 25% of the vote. Who wins? Well, the fact is, nobody particularly won. Everybody won, actually. Everybody gets to represent that district in some fashion. Since the Greens won 50% of the vote, and it's a 4-member district, 50% of 4, I hope you know, or half of 4, is 2. So the Greens get 2 representatives, the Communists gets 1 representative, 1 out of 4, 25%, and the Socialists get 1 representative as well, since they won 25% of the vote. That's an example of a multi-member district with proportional representation. It's very neat, very clean. Sometimes it gets very confusing and things like that. But hopefully it's illustrative enough that you can see that the representation is dished out based on the proportion of votes that that particular party receives. Flip that, the complete opposite of going back one slide. Flip that, the complete opposite of multi-member districts with proportional representation is a single-member district with a plurality rule. And this is where Duverger's law comes in. I can guarantee Duverger's law will be on your test because it's very, very important. Duverger was a political scientist who studied countries worldwide and looked at their electoral law systems. And he said in Duverger's law that election systems that rely on single-member districts and plurality voting systems favor a two-party system. Single-member districts and a plurality system, that's what we have here in America, once again, favors a two-party system. In single-member districts, parties compete over the median voter, the voter that is exactly in the middle, the hypothetical voter whose position lies at the midpoint in the distribution of voter ideology. In theory, if a candidate's position attracts the median voter, it will attract all those to the left or to the right, depending on whether it's a leftist party or a rightist party, and receive the majority. Now, I know that's kind of word heavy and it may not make sense. You may want to pause the video and read through that again. It definitely wouldn't hurt. But let's go ahead and try to illustrate it through a spatial model. This is what we have here in America. So kind of imagine a bell curve going through here, and this is the distribution of all ideologies within America. And you have Joe Schmo here, who's the median voter. So here in America, we do have a number of green parties, or sorry, not green parties, of third parties. The example of the third party I put in here is the Green Party. The Green Party is over here on the left. Now the Green Party is able to attract a few voters over here, but not very many. And so what they're going to do, and since they know that they're not going to win the election, the Green Party will ally with the Democratic Party. The Green Party gets absorbed into the Democrats. You can also imagine maybe a far-right party over here, such as the Tea Party voters. They tend to be right of the Republicans. They get absorbed into the Republicans. And so that's why, because every party is competing for this median voter, they're going to move towards the party which is more able to gain that median voter. The Greens get absorbed into the Dems, the Tea Party gets absorbed into the Reps, the Republicans, because they all want to win. They kind of compromise. Now, the Green Party isn't going to be able to achieve a lot of its goals to the Democrats, but at least it can say, hey, we're the Green Party, we'll vote for you guys if you maybe give us a compromise on environmental law or something like that. Or the Tea Party will do the same thing with maybe the Republicans can give us a compromise on, say, lower taxes or something like that. And these third parties within the single member plurality systems, these third parties tend to get absorbed into one of the major two parties because these two parties are the ones that are closest to the median voter, Joe Schmo here. So it's a lot easier to illustrate in person. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I will try to get those answered. But hopefully that makes sense enough to where you can kind of see how Duverger's law favors a two-party system. Alright, so that's the spatial model of Duverger's law. Another kind of spatial model of Duverger's law here is this push towards moderation and the pull towards extremism. This is usually used to illustrate primary and general elections, but we can also use it to illustrate Duverger's law. This top one is Duverger's law right here. They're trying to go for the moderate voter, the median voter. The Democrats and the Republican candidate will both push for that median voter. You may have a Green voter over here, and you may have a Tea Party voter over here on the right. And they'll get absorbed into here because the Republicans already know that as long as we can gain this median voter, everyone on the right of that is already going to vote for us. Same with the Democrats. They already know that everyone over here on the left is going to vote for us anyway. What we really need to do is try to find that median voter, that Joe Schmo, so that we can win that election. And the third-party candidates will go along with them anyway. So that's the reason why third parties do not exist or do not have very much success within the electoral laws of the United States, within that single-member plurality district kind of mentality. Now, the bottom one is usually used to illustrate primary elections. It's the pull towards extremism. In order to gain the nomination of their party, they need to seem as far right or as far left as possible in order to gain the votes. Because the median voter in primary elections exists right here or right here. They exist within the middle of the extremes, the middle extremes. So it's the pull towards extremism. I hope that makes sense. But this one is definitely used to illustrate Duverger's law because everyone's trying to go for that middle type voter. But even though we do have a two-party system, people still vote for third parties. First off, there's kind of three different ways to look at it. First off, it's similar to abstention. If you're voting for a third party, your vote doesn't really count. So it's similar to abstention. However, the second purpose of voting for a third party is the fact that it's a duty. It's a duty to vote. We as Americans should vote. We should exercise our right to vote. I don't agree with the other two candidates, but I'm going to exercise my duty to vote, so I might as well vote for a third party that maybe represents my views. And then finally, third-party voting is expressive. It's worth your time to at least express your opinion and maybe kind of throw a threat into the Democrat or the Republican Party and show them that you are willing to defect from their party and you are willing to express your actual true opinions. So, what do third parties do? Well, third parties, they do actually win local and state offices for a fair amount of states. Do have a high presence of third parties within their local and state offices. I would say here in Texas, not so much. Here in Texas, it's a deeply Republican-dominated state. But if you look at nationwide at certain local and state offices, you do find a few third parties. They force the major parties to move and to capture the lost votes. In order to capture, let's say, enough people defect from the Democrats or enough people defect from the Republicans, those third parties will encourage those other major parties to move towards their position in order to capture those lost votes. They force the major parties to move to capture the lost votes that may be on an issue that's further left or further right than they would really like to. So you've seen this mainly with the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party movement has moved the Republican Party extremely right because the Republican Party needs to capture those lost votes from Tea Party voters that are dissatisfied with the establishment Republicans. Finally, they get the issues out on the agenda through media coverage and public awareness. And the best example of this is the Rent is Too Damn High Party. Yes, it's actually a party named the Rent is Too Damn High Party. It's a third party that exists mainly within New York. And you have this guy, his name is slipping me right now. his name is James something. I totally forgot. I'm so sorry. His name is James something. He's the leader of the Rent is Too Damn High party. And I've provided the link here. This is his famous speech for the Rent is Too Damn High party. It's definitely worth your time. It's definitely worth the comedic value, at least. He's a very funny man. However, he's very serious about his issue. His issue is the fact that rent is too damn high, particularly in New York City. You can imagine how high the rent is there. The rent is too damn high. That's the whole purpose of this third party. It's a very important issue to him, and he forces during this debate, during this video, he forces the other candidates to actually talk about rent in the governor's debate for New York State. So he gets the issues on the agenda through the media coverage. He's on this public debate and public awareness. He actually gets the other candidates to talk about how the fact that rent is too damn high in New York City. So that's just an example of what the third parties do. All right. So we talked about Pig, Pie, and Poe, party and government, parties organization, party and electorate. We talked about political ideology. We talked about party identification. And then finally we talked about third parties and the history of parties as well, and why does America have a two-party system. We've reviewed all of that within this lecture, so hopefully you guys are good to go for your test. And once again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I know we covered a lot of stuff. I know it can get kind of confusing, so I just want to make sure you guys have everything that you need to do very well on your final test. This is the beginning of Unit 3, so start out strong. All right. What are your discussion board questions for this week? Well, you have two main ones. First off, think of your party identification now. We talked about party identification and how important that is, and how it's mostly acquired through your political socialization. So I want you to go ahead and answer what factors influence which party you identify with now. Think about your race, your gender, your family, your religion. Did any of that factor into your current party identification? Do you believe that you will continue to vote for this party? Remember, it's a long-term propensity thing. So think about 10 years, 20 years in the future. Do you think you'll be continuing to vote for this party? Now, I know some of you are independent, so go ahead. If you're an independent voter, state why you chose to be an independent. If independent, do you tend to side with one party over the other? Or do you tend to be a split-ticket voter? Do you think you will ever join an established party? Not all independents continue to be independent. As soon as they find a party that they can attach themselves to, they tend to join that established party. Sorry, I forgot to add this. When you do state why you chose to be independent, tell me whether is it frustration with the established two parties? Is it just that you're unsure of the issues? Is it that maybe you tend to side with a third party, or is it just that you don't want to be locked down to another party? All right. And then second of all, I want you to visit either the Republican or Democrats' website, GOP.com, or Democrats.org. Those are the two websites for the two major parties here in America. I want you to view their respective platforms. You can usually find that on a link on the header or up there at the top. It'll say maybe platform, it'll say issues or something like that. View their respective platforms. Find one statement from either party that you agree with, and find a statement from either party that you disagree with. So if you're in my Texas government course, you guys have already kind of done something similar to that. Be sure to pick a different issue that you haven't done so far if you are in my Texas government class as well. All right, why did this statement stand out to you, and why do you agree or disagree with it? Consider using this for your second essay. Remember, your second essay is due in about a month. So the fact that we're talking about an issue on the particular platform, tell me whether you agree with it or disagree with it, and consider using it for your second essay. You will already have a head start on your second essay as well. So those are your discussion board questions. If you have any questions about the material today, once again, send those my way. Keep up the good work. You guys are doing well. We're almost to the end of the semester. So just keep it up, and I'll be here if you need me. All right, we'll go ahead and end this week. I will see you next week on YouTube.